over the program to Mr. Chinyama, who will give a brief introduction before handing over to the chief discussant. I'd like to just do a few introductions. First of all of you welcome. I'd like to also welcome our panel here today, and as well as the main presenter, who is Mr. Brian Maguranyanga. I'm sure all of those who are in, who research and follow up on apostolic studies, you will be familiar with Brian Maguranyanga. I'd like to also welcome to our panel Ms. Tendai Pudo, who is the founder and coordinator of Apostolic Women Empowerment Trust, AWET. Welcome today. We'd like to also welcome Ms. Karen Webb, who is the Operational Research Director of the Organization for Public Health Interventions and Development, OTRID. Welcome, Karen. And we'd also like to welcome the facilitator, Professor Ezra Chitando from the University of Zimbabwe. Welcome, Professor. Also in the audience today, I'd just like to acknowledge one or two organizations who are with us today. We'd like to welcome members of the Ministry of Health and Childcare, our government partners. We'd like to also acknowledge the presence of CEDA representatives, SAFAIDS, ActionAid, Pact World, MCHIP Zimbabwe, SOS, FHI 360, FITRAC, and UMCZEA, and any other organizations that are here today. And as always, we'd like to also welcome our esteemed members of the media who are with us today. So before I hand over to Victor, I'd like to just inform you that we will be live tweeting. We will be live on Facebook, and we'll also be live on YouTube. We'd like to welcome you to also tweet any interesting factoids, any interesting information that you'd like to share on Twitter. We'll be using the hashtag BrownBagZim. So anything that you'd like to tweet, feel free to just hashtag BrownBagZim, and hopefully we'll get a conversation started on Twitter as well. So to get the program started, I'd like to hand over to our Chief of Communications, Victor Chinyama, who will give a brief introduction, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. I won't take too long. As you know, we usually try to reserve this to an hour and a half at most. So today is no exception. We hope that we should be out of here maybe around 1:30 or 1:45 at the very least. Today we're discussing a very important subject for many of us here, and that is the whole issue of faith, religion, and how it interacts with uptake of social services. I'm a person of faith, and I'm sure many in this room also can claim to be, believers of one religion or the other. And for the Christian religion in particular, those who read the Bible, you'll see that some of the harshest criticisms that Jesus ever had were reserved for people of faith, right? Yeah, the religious scholars and the Pharisees and the Sadducees of the time, because he recognized that sometimes faith can stand in the way of progress. And what we're discussing here is how can we initiate dialogue around this issue of faith and belief, which is very hard to change, by the way, in such a way that it doesn't become a barrier to human progress. It doesn't become a barrier to our own individual progress, but also to the progress of the association or the religious group that we belong to. As UNICEF, we joined a group of organizations that have done a lot of work around this area, a lot of studies, some of which you were picking up as you were coming in, but there's a lot of other things that we have done, in particular, operational research that was done in Buhera by Dr. Brian Maguranyanga, who you are going to hear from because he'll be talking about these things. And then followed up with Professor Felto, who did an assessment of how faith and the law interact. And that also is a very interesting presentation that unfortunately we ran out of copies there, but we'll try and send you by email. And Dr. Maguranyanga also did an assessment on, soon after we had the measles campaign, measles rubella campaign in September 2015, he followed up with an assessment of where things changing now, because we're seeing some very interesting statistics among what you would call sort of religious objectors to vaccination, immunization, and so on. We're seeing very high uptake. We wanted to understand what was behind that. So he undertook, it was qualitative research, talking to groups of individuals, the chiefs, the leaders, and the women, and so on, to really get an understanding of what was behind this. Again, he'll be able to talk about that. All of this leads us to one thing, basically, which is how can we create strategies for engagement? Because this change will not happen by, ZRP coming with guns and so on, forcing people to change. It's not going to happen that way. There has to be dialogue, consensus, in a respectful manner that needs to happen within the communities themselves, but also between the communities and the service providers. That is what we're going to hear from. So sit back and relax, and hope you are going to enjoy and participate in the discussion as well. Please. Can you just take the questions?
I'd like to introduce Mr. Ezra Sibanda. If you could come and take over the facilitation of this brown bag and introduce our main presenter.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Please relax, greet your neighbor and say, how are you doing? Thank you very much. It is my singular honor and privilege at this moment in time to invite fellow researcher, colleague, friend, and a passionate advocate for social change and justice, Dr. Brian Maguranyanga, who is going to come and share with us his research findings. Brian, it's
okay. Good afternoon. If you allow me, I'm not going to hold the mic. I hope I'm loud enough. You can hear me in the back. Can you all hear me loud and clear? Good projection, voice? Okay. My name is Brian Maguranyanga. Yeah, some of you are familiar with the work that I've done. In the past, from 2011, I've been doing research work around religion and healthcare seeking behaviors. And part of my interest really was around apostolic communities, or others call them apostolic sects, or popularly known in Shoda as apostolic. The white garment churches, as they are known, mainly in the media. But we also appreciate that they don't all wear white garments. And what's interesting from the picture there, what you can see is a group of women wearing white, and the next there wearing a lovely white uniform, but interacting and taking care and advising a mother and taking care of your child, right? And what I'm going to do today in this talk, treat it as a talk. It's not really a presentation of research findings, because what I would like to do is to engage you effectively and get us to rethink what we've known, either through research, in popular media, and in other documents, whether we're healthcare providers or development practitioners. We have our own framing of the apostolic community, of apostolic sects. But pardon me, I'm not going to use the word sect moving forward. Why? Because it has its own connotations. So I'll speak to them as apostolic religious groups or communities, but recognizing that. So why talk about suffering? Why talk about faith healing? And also just healthcare seeking behavior. There's a difference, just conceptually, when you talk about health-seeking behavior and healthcare-seeking behavior. Those are two different things. Healthcare-seeking behaviors, you're looking at use of modern healthcare services. Then health-seeking behavior is generally the behaviors that are associated in pursuit of health. It could be traditional, it could be modern, it could be whatever strategies you deploy to make sure that your health is taken care of, or if you're ill, you're seeking different forms of care. So what is it that we know about the apostolic? We all have different visions, so to speak, different images of the white garment groups. This is what I'm hoping to shift and get us to fracture that picture we have and see in our minds that are happening and what's driving those changes. And those changes that are taking place, we also know from evidence that they're driven by a number of factors. And I'll speak to those factors that are propelling the transitions, the transformations, the changes, and the shifts that are happening within that. Then speak to the implications of those shifts and changes. Of particular importance that I want you to pay to is who are the key drivers of that particular change or those particular changes. So because we've had these rigid views upon the apostolic community, these perspectives we have actually undermine our ability to work effectively with the apostolics. Why? Because they create stereotypes, but also prejudice, in some instances, discrimination in terms of how we interface with them. So if we're going to create and co-create solutions and work towards addressing some of the issues, it could be social issues, it could be health issues, whatever issues you're passionate about or your organization focus on, you really have to reframe the way we have defined, engaged, interacted, and constructed the apostolic community. And it's because of our blindness. Sometimes the things that we've missed on our radar, but we continue acting and working on that path, ignoring the shifts that are taking. Sorry. So for those that are not really familiar with the religious context in Zimbabwe, I'll give you just a quick run so that you get an appreciation for the apostolic community. What we know from the data, whether it's the ZDHL or mix in Zimbabwe, especially for head of households, when you look at the proportion of the population in terms of the head of households, we know that the apostolic sect constitutes 32% of heads of households in the country for those aged between 15 and 49. And what's interesting really is you find, sorry, my apologies, just so what you find is 32%, if you combine the Protestant and the Pentecostal, they're equal to the sheer size of the apostolic. So that in itself tells you that there are a significant segment of our population, right? And when you look at children under 5, they constitute 38%. Why is that important? What we've seen is this exponential growth in apostolic religion in Zimbabwe. And that is profound implication. You cannot ignore whether it's your health interventions, your social and development interventions, you cannot ignore the apostolic, right? Then when you look at the distribution of women aged 50 to 49 by religion, look at something that's very interesting here, right? These two interesting religions. We've seen a growth based on the three subjects, Pentecostal and Apostolic. But really the growth among the distribution of women, the proportion of women within Apostolic religion has outgrown these other religions. The mainline churches have seen a decline, right? Can you see just demographic shift in terms of movement to a particular religion? What you're seeing there is more movement towards Apostolic religion. Then the question could be, what attracts women to Apostolic religion, right? So that's another interesting question. So you see these women, different subgroups within the Apostolic community, but also children. In the previous slide, I showed you that 42% of the women in reproductive age are Apostolic, 38% of children under 5 are Apostolic, right? But for us to appreciate the behaviors within Apostolic or among Apostolic members, you have to appreciate the core founding doctrine, especially of the founding fathers. And this you can get from a number of documents written by the founding fathers of Apostolic religion, mainly from Anglican. I'm just giving you a background so that you get to appreciate. John Maranga Apostolic, John Masowe had a similar calling to Maranga. Paul Maja, you read the Divine Mission to appreciate. So the John Maranga Apostolic, the similar calling to Maranga. That's where you get to Paul Maja, you get the Divine Mission, mandating him to use holy water as part of faith healing. So what you find, which is a common tenet across all the apostolic groups, is the centrality or the central role of Holy Spirit, or what the form were, and also faith healing using different faith healing rituals. Holy water, holy oil, matombo, stones. There's so many rituals that they use as part of the faith healing system. Then also they emphasize strict adherence to apostolic doctrine, beliefs, and practices. So when you appreciate this, these three central tenets, then you appreciate their health-seeking behavior and their healthcare-seeking behavior. And for most of them, modern healthcare services is the alternative. Their primary health system is faith healing, right? But for the population, greater population in Zimbabwe, excluding the apostolic, the primary health system is modern healthcare. The alternative is faith healing, right? So this is very important because it will help you see the challenges in getting the apostolic to shift towards modern healthcare services. So when we did a study in 2011, we came up with a typology of apostolic groups. The reason being is, in most of the reports, they were treated as a homogeneous group. One common group, the same, right? So we brushed them with the same brush. We painted them with the same brush, right? So from that side, we realized, no, they are actually a diverse group, diverse practices, although they share central tenets. So part of the ultra-conservatives, for example, will be your Joan Maranga, right? Then you've got part of Joan Masowe, which says no to uptake of modern healthcare services. So we use that typology based on the extent to which they accepted modern healthcare services, which is limited. So based on further research, we've actually realized, no, that categorization was an oversimplification. Because even within Joan Maranga, you've got some now who are pushing towards uptake of modern healthcare services, right? Can you see even the ones that were painted as though they are ultra-conservative to the extent that they reject modern medicine? Now actually within, there are those that are pushing to uptake of modern services and taking modern healthcare services and medicine. So that's Paul Maja, the African Apostolic Church, and the use of holy water. And you find what's very amazing and interesting is the extent to which the apostolic groups now use popular media, use social media to communicate and engage the wider public, right? And also to attract. So that's part of the engagement that's taking place and influencing people to join. And all these implications in terms of how women and children have shifted towards apostolic religion. But also I understand and appreciate their emphasis and their convictions on faith. So how and others in 2012 did an analysis of surveys, I think it was the MIMS data, and what they came up with was, from the data, apostolic religion is a significant risk factor in the reduction or in reducing use of modern healthcare services. If it is a risk, right, basically what it means is there is poor uptake of those services, reproductive, maternal, newborn child health services. There will be limited uptake, in some cases no uptake of those services. Then Bertrand and others in the earlier studies also showed the link between apostolic religion and maternal and infant mortality, particularly in the Wonder Valley in Mani areas. So why was that? So their emphasis really was just the apostolic healing system and beliefs and practices contributes to poor uptake of rejection of the modern healthcare services. So this is the dominant narrative that we know. Other scholarly work by Isabel Bunyora, who's now professor at Western Kentucky University in the States, really she narrates this suffering and healing within the apostolic community. And for our evidence, this is what stimulated further interest in, is it really suffering that we're seeing, or suffering plays a part in a shift towards positive behaviors that we need to promote uptake of modern healthcare services, right? Then you have journalists. Anyone here from the Herald? Yeah. Very fascinating article that I came across in 2011 when I was doing this study. This was one of the defining newspaper articles that got me so interested and passionate about the issues that the communities face. Bush camps deliver death, not children. I was like, wow, really? So what happens at these bush camps? So the bush camps, basically, the reporter was referring to are called Chitsizo. In their plural, Chitsizo, which are the places, it's almost like separate places of one, I think it's places of healing, one. Two, it's where women and children go for treatment, even men. So basically, it's their health center, so to speak. Yeah? So in that article, what the reporter narrated was just conditions that lead to the death of women and children. So out of curiosity, I decided, let me visit. I did visit them, went and saw the places, as much as we're not allowed to. Somehow, working with UDCs, we managed to get first-hand experience of these facilities. If you have been, you will feel and you can appreciate the conditions that lead to the death of women and children, right? And I'll speak to that. But also, in the different newspaper articles, you hear about prophets raping women. All the tricks that they play, women who are struggling to fall pregnant go there for help, which they call kushandirwa. In English, literally translation means to be worked on, right? I mean, think about it, kushandirwa. So you go to a hospital, is it to be worked on or kushandirwa? It carries a different connotation when you go there. So when you go there, it's almost a total surrender. So hence you find some of the sexual violence taking place, but also child protection violations take place. Then socially, we've had so much about child marriages, teen marriages within the apostolic. Apple people saying, "Oh, what's wrong with these people?" And the data indicates that. So when you look at traditional and apostolic, you see high rates of teen marriages, but also child mothers. What drives that? Why is it we find that apostolic girls tend to be married early and they fall pregnant or they are made pregnant, right? I remember traveled to Buera on an assignment with UNICEF when we were doing the study, and we came across this young lady, girl, not lady, that's a child, right? She's 15. At the time we were doing the field work, she was 7 months pregnant. I would probably assume maybe she fell pregnant when she was 14. Or maybe she didn't fall pregnant. Maybe she was abused. Definitely, I don't think it was a choice. Why? Because that's a child, isn't it? So think about it. At 14, she's pregnant and she's a mother to be, a mother to be. What are the risks that teens face when they're pregnant? Risk of maternal mortality, pregnancy complications, infant mortality, they're likely to lose their child, right? So all those are the risks that young girls or children face. But we also have heard about stories, we've had stories of children dying in their numbers for not being vaccinated, right? I'll tell you one story. 2011, I went to Dema Seke with Reverend Chakai. Go to a village, and in that village, it belonged to an apostolic man from the Joani Marango group. 7 wives. He had lost, if I remember correctly, I think 7 to 8 children to measles. Think about it. 7 children lost to measles. A child preventable condition, which can easily be prevented with a wife, 2 pregnancy complications. The wife had been taken to Chitsiti. Then as I was driving back, it hit me so hard. And the question that I asked myself, I remember I was just about to get to waterfalls. And as you're driving from Chituliza back into Harare, there's that first traffic light as you enter Harare from Chituliza. It hit me so hard and I felt this burden in my heart. That how can this man remain standing having lost, count 5, 6, 7 children? Would I have survived had I lost one? Would you survive if you lost your partner? And why is it for some, life goes on? Should it go on? Yes, it must go on. But I think we get to a point where children are treated as though they are abused. In Shona, they say among the apostolic, especially the people that we interviewed, Mwana chidina chakaputsika does it? No fora chil. English translation, a child is like a blood. If it's broken, you mold another. In other words, get pregnant again, get with the problem. Right? However, from the evidence that's coming, what we find is it's because of the emotional distance between apostolic fathers, especially the ones with so many children and so many wives. Such loss is not real and meaningful and painful loss. I would argue, right? But for the women themselves, there has been a rethinking of the value of children. But also this fascinating view and dominant thinking that's also there within that. So who will sing me to heaven? Achandi Birandiyani. Right? Achandi Birandiyani, who will sing me to heaven. So if I violate, if I don't act according to our doctrine and our practices, and if I opt to go and take modern services, when my doctrine says you shouldn't and you mustn't, then it means I'll be ostracized, right? I'll be rejected. There are sanctions that I'll have to experience or go through because I've violated and I've not adhered to our faith and our beliefs. But also there are others who believe that, you know what, we should die in our faith. And that willingness to suffer and die, as long as I am strictly adhering to our faith, it's okay. Because I'll have people who sing me to heaven. Interestingly, you will have someone who says, death is kudakomai, murairo wamai. So when there's that strong rationalization, what you find is strict adherence to religion and the limited willingness to explore the alternative, which is modern medicine. So what has happened? This is the core of my talk. I'll walk through this quickly, but just to get you to see the shift. And this is what, for me, is worth recognizing. What is motivated, what has driven the changes, and what has created these empowering or empowered healthcare-seeking behaviors, where women, in spite of the restrictive doctrine and regulations from their churches, they are making a decision to go ahead and utilize the services in violation of their doctrine. Celebrating, I use the word celebrating here loosely. We're celebrating the empowered apostolic women who have deployed multiple strategies to bring about the change. When they get to a point when they say enough is enough, not my children, I'm not going to die, I'll have to make an empowered decision and change. But also there is the reinterpretation of apostolic faith itself, right? And this is happening. But the spiritualization of illnesses, which has been the dominant, every condition is spiritualized. You have a pregnancy complication, it's an evil spirit. Or maybe you committed adultery. Or some other logic or illogical reason is given to justify why you're in that situation, right? When a child dies, there is another explanation, but it's spiritualized, right? So the medical conditions are not explained as medical conditions, but as spiritual or spiritually driven. But there's also this recognition that there is life-saving medicine that you can actually use to save your life and the life of your children. But also the women themselves, we find there's a shift, there's a change in their status. And I'll speak to how those changes are happening and the implication of those changes. But most importantly as well is the social innovations in healthcare delivery. So the interaction, the collaboration between your healthcare workers and the apostolic women themselves. This article here, I'll show you when later on. You don't worry about it. Yeah, so that's fine. So in this article, what you find is a reporter in January 2017 started writing about the changes within the apostolic, right? And when I read it, I was really fascinated and said, wow, okay, this exactly speaks to what our data is actually showing us. How come it's not reflected so much in our scholarship, but also in media? Then part of the conversation was when you discuss it, it's almost like you're opening up this secrecy and you're exposing the apostolic women. So for a season, we thought that was the case. Then we realized, no, this is actually the conversation that's taking place in the public domain. And the women themselves are stepping out. Us as researchers, we felt we had moral obligation not to write about it. But the apostolic women themselves were stepping outside into this space where they're saying, we need to make a difference, right? So suffering, if you remember Ponyora's book, Suffering and Healing, Wilderness, you remember that slide that I showed you? So suffering can actually be a motivation for change, right? Up to a point, suffering becomes a driver, a motivation for change. When Marange interviewing, and these women were talking, with this deep pain about their loss. We lost children to preventable conditions, and they were reflecting and said, but we keep losing our children keep dying from this condition that can actually be prevented. But there's something that we can do, there's something that can be done to save our children, right? So there is an increasing recognition that vaccination or life-saving modern medicines actually are good, as much as our religion says, no, don't use, right? Then you have some of the women saying, no, we're overzealous about our religion. We later realize that we were the ones lost. Because every time there was a funeral, we were the ones mourning, right? So this perpetual, continual loss of children became actually the suffering associated with that. The pain of loss became a driving force for the change, right? So when you look at both the sense of loss, but also self-realization that I can do something about it, which is the urgency, right? The empowered conviction that I can actually act and change my condition and I can save my life. And I can save the life of my children, became a very powerful force for change. But also among the women, they realized, no, it looks like the men are disconnected emotionally from their children. Because there were so many, but I'm the one who keeps losing, right? So there was this rethinking, revisiting the value of their own children. But also we have stories of apostolic women themselves who had gone through those experiences and realized, no, I have to empower other women to bring about that change, right? So when you find empowered apostolic women, empowered by different factors and influences, realize that they can actually get other women empowered to bring about a change. Then you have almost this movement, this swelling of a number of women who are actually saying enough is enough, we need to bring about change and use modern medicine, get our children vaccinated, but also deploy what we deem best stealth strategies. Secrecy is a powerful, empowering strategy, right? Then the question I think for some would ask, so why are you propagating, why are you supporting that women should behave and act secretively or secretly when it comes to uptake of modern services? When you're first with challenges, also violence, because even within the households, some women were beat up for using modern family planning methods. Some were beat up for having children vaccinated. So when you talk about gender-based violence in the context of religion and the health, you cannot run away from that because it does happen. But also apostolic health, village health workers have played a very powerful role in terms of just empowering women to use modern health services. Could you play the video? Just about two. So there's this video about Florence, the village health worker. Really, it encapsulates the story and this narrative of change that's taking place. And what I'll do is after the video, I'll just speak to how best we can sustain the changes how we can build on those experiences to make sure that the gates are not closed and the apostolic community.
My name is Felix Mafaralkwa. I'm a great worker. What do I find? It is my belief to move from one household to another household, assessing the growth of the child. My name is Felix Mafaralkwa. I'm a great worker. What do I find? It is my belief to move from one household to another household, assessing the growth of the child. So I move around with myself. I weigh the baby, and I talk to the mother. You are to improve maternal health. In my sect, we believe that he will be healed by water. So our doctor doesn't allow us to go to the clinic. 18.5. He said, being a village health worker and so also a mother. I'm a mother of 5 children, but the last one is late. I have got problems. That's why I'm pregnant. I become very ill. But my husband, he told me that I will no longer going to the clinic because we are now church goers. So I brought my last child. But the children was ill. Me, I was ill. He just lived for 1.5 years. And he died. So that pained me a lot. The death of my last born inspired me. It gave me power. It empowered me. So I got the power to talk to my husband. From now, I'll be a volunteer. I will start talking to other women. The good of going to the clinic. If you don't want, we can break the marriage. At first, it was impossible. At first, no one would want to go to the clinic. They fear their husbands, their in-laws, or even the priest. But bit by bit, I do it private. When I see a mother at a ball, when I see a mother in the fields, just tell me, please, can we go and immunize our children? Please, can we go to the clinic? So they start one by one going there privately.
So let's get what this video tells us. Can you see the secrecy, the stealth strategies that I've spoken to? But can you also see how the experience of pain and loss, one woman who became a change agent. Pain inspired her to change her condition, but not only her condition, but also the condition of other women in similar situations, right? But also the social innovation that emerged between health providers and the apostolic women themselves. Flexibility in healthcare service delivery, quick service, provide service after hours. Let's tailor the service to the woman, right? Individually tailored service, but also community tailored services, which are the gardens. Gardens are not physical spaces. These are social constructed spaces where the women and the healthcare providers meet to provide modern healthcare services. And this data also came from confirmation of these experiences, came even from the immunization rapid assessment. And we realized that those changes are happening. So the promising direction, I think, just to conclude, what you find is you would not find apostolic women actually teaming, working together to actually campaign and advocate for change. But that's happening. It's Chikoro, that's for family planning. That's them. Look at just the energy, just the picture itself tells you a story. That they're stepping out of this private space where we had pigeonholed them into this public space where they say we need apostolic transformation. So in conclusion, what I'm saying is, let's not view apostolic religion or apostolic groups as though they are frozen in time and space. Change is taking place. And the notion of this helpless apostolic woman, right? If we read Konyora's work where she talks about gender and patriarchy within the apostolic, what we're also seeing is these empowered apostolic women who are making a difference in their own households and in churches, but also in the lives of their own children and their own lives too, right? So we have to recognize this assertive, empowered apostolic woman who's negotiating this difficult religious and social terrain with the primary objective to make sure that their well-being is improved and the health of their children is also good. So we will, and we are seeing in the data, if you go, UNICEF published the extended analysis of mix focusing on religion, it will show you the changes in all these indicators, reproductive, maternal, and newborn child health. But I think ultimately we have to recognize that especially healthcare workers, nurses in rural areas, have formed this unique relationship, a bond with apostolic women, which is also promoting the change. Finally, I think the modern medicine, which was the alternative, is becoming the preferred, right? So there is this shift. And for us to argue that the apostolic as a homogeneous group do not uptake, I think it's a mistaken perspective. We have to recognize, even within the ultra-conservatives, there are changes that are taking place. And we need to engage the women, we need to sustain the empowering strategies that they're deploying, but also work with religious leaders and traditional leaders to bring about and sustain the changes. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to apologize. Brian is such a passionate speaker, I should have stopped him a short while ago. But you see, he kept saying as I conclude in finishing. So thank you very much. Let's do a quick temperature check. Please talk to your neighbor and see how they do. With that, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to invite Ms. Ndebet, the founder coordinator, Apostolic Women Empowerment, to respond to Brian's paper and give us a perspective. Let's put our hands together.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Am I not loud enough? No. Hello. Is it okay?
Testing 1, 2.
Testing 1, 2. I think that's okay. Good afternoon, everybody.
Enjoy the camera. Camera.
So we need to stand where the camera, because we are broadcasting live. We move it a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tendai Budo. I'm the founder of Apostolic Women Empowerment Trust. I'm also an apostolic member. Can you see me? Okay. I'm a proud apostolic member. Why am I saying I'm proud? I'm proud because I'm empowered. I'd like to acknowledge what Dr. Magwenya presented. I think all the information which she did present really does speak to what is really happening in the apostolic community. The shifting, it's really there. And we can really see it because I'm one example of that shifting dynamics which are happening at the moment. And I'm just going to present shortly about Apostolic Women Empowerment Trust, where we've come from and where we are today, and what has driven us to have this organization. Like I said, I'm a proud apostolic member, and I would really want to see an empowered apostolic community, an empowered apostolic community who would really make their own informed decisions, especially the women. Okay. AWET is a non-governmental registered trust mandated to advance the rights of adolescents and women issues and mainstreaming of gender in apostolic church activities. AWET is fully cognizant and works with diverse apostolic churches who have different beliefs, norms, values, and perceptions on key social issues such as child marriage, education, HIV, maternal newborn child health, gender-based violence, adolescent sexual reproductive health, and rights. Primary socialization of a child takes place during the early age by women, hence the need to impart good values, norms, beliefs from an empowered apostolic women. We as AWET, we believe that if we socialize with our children at an early stage, definitely those children will be empowered to make informed decisions at a later stage in life. Taking for an example, if it's a boy child, if there is primary socialization and the women does really impart good values in that child, you will be a better man who will fight to protect his own siblings, to protect also the girl child. As what Dr. Magwenya acknowledged, that child marriage is a major concern in the apostolic community. We have been advocating in ending child marriage in the apostolic community. We want to eradicate violence against women and children because it's a major concern. And as it is now, of course, the shift is there and it's coming slowly, but we would really want to see a very big change because children are our future, and we really have to put our heads together to really see that there is a change, especially with the children.
in that picture there, I think we can see, and these men are apostolic men. All of them in that picture, they are apostolic men. So we really need progressive apostolic men and women to work together so that we will be in a position to address negative masculinity and femininity in the apostolic communities. And in that picture, I think all of us we are aware of what really happened at the beginning of the year. We had an outbreak of typhoid, and we took part as women to address other apostolic members in different communities where there was typhoid outbreak. And we took it upon ourselves to move from one apostolic prayer site to the other. Of course, it wasn't easy, but we managed to dialogue and also to even sit down with them so that they could be in a position to build proper toilets. I think you appreciate most of the apostolic members, they really do pray outside. And when they pray outside, most of the places, they don't have proper sanitation, they don't have running water. And that's a very big risk. So we went around trying to educate them on typhoid alert. And there we say, for a nation to progress socially, when there are social inclusions in all areas, i.e. health services, definitely a nation will progress. When I came to UNICEF, very first time when I came here, I wanted to see Mr. Chinyama, Victor Chinyama. The very first day when I came here, when I met him, I think he said, at the back of his mind, he said, this woman is really wasting my time. Because I think at the back of his mind, he was looking forward to meet an apostolic woman who was rugged, who was filthy, who was dirty and uneducated. I think Dr. Maguranyanga did speak about stereotypes. Even the very first time when I met Dr. Maguranyanga, he said, I'm very sorry, I don't talk to journalists. Do I look like a journalist? And I said, no, I'm an apostolic member. I really need to talk to you about your researches in the apostolic communities. And that's when he said, oh, okay, we can talk. We are very grateful to what UNICEF has done for us. UNICEF has invested in AWET, and our goal as AWET is to have a movement of empowered women and children who will be life champions in the apostolic churches. We have been creating awareness around the country, and the very first program which we had was in Gweru. When we had our first conference, which we saw over 400 apostolic women from different apostolic churches coming together to dialogue about issues which really did affect us and which really do challenge us in the apostolic communities. And one of the challenges which we had was child marriage. And our theme there was Apostolic Women Unite Against Child Marriage. And it was a success. After that, we had a follow-up on child marriage issues in different districts. And those are some of the successes which we have yet is Albert. Okay. I think when you see and when you have a look at that picture, I think you can see women who are trying to put down things on paper. I think for us to be empowered, we need to be educated. We need to dialogue. We need to sit down and really find our spaces so that we can make a difference. And in order for us to do that, we need the support from different organizations who have got passion or who have got apostolic members at heart. This picture was taken in this room. We had our capacity workshop on typhoid sensitization in this room, and we are grateful that apostolic members are being empowered each and every day. We have created awareness in different communities and around the country, but the only challenges now which we have are services. A lot of apostolic members, they need services. I think you can appreciate from the clip which we just saw about Florence, we need services. Services whereby apostolic members can access, even if during the night, during the day, we need those services. We need to strengthen what Ministry of Health is doing and what Ministry of Health is offering and other organizations are doing out there. But we need services. We've got a challenge whereby an abused child or an abused girl has to make a decision, maybe to run away from a forced marriage. Where does she go? She doesn't have anywhere to go. Maybe if she goes to her aunt or she goes to her uncle, the uncle or the aunt, they've got the same beliefs as the parents who are forcing her into that marriage. And she cannot run away anyway. So we need safe places where these children can go and seek refuge. We need to strengthen the services which are already there, but also services which can accommodate the apostolic members. According to data which was shown by Dr. Maguranyanga, we are 38% of the Zimbabwean population. And being 38% of the Zimbabwean population, we are a population which cannot be ignored. We are a population which needs Zimbabwe to progress. And if a nation is to progress, this should be social inclusion. Social inclusion in each and every everything that is done in Zimbabwe. We are supposed to see girl children representing us in parliament. If it's going to be a doctor, we're supposed to see doctors from the apostolic communities. We're supposed to see even a president one day from the apostolic community. They're supposed to be social inclusion. I think as Albert, we have achieved so much in a short space of time, and with resources and support from different organizations, I hope and believe that we can make a difference. We can make Zimbabwe the Zimbabwe that we really want to see as apostolic members. And we would want also to participate in a society where there are equal opportunities. And also would like to join hands with an organization out there so that we can create solutions and have better outcomes for tomorrow. As they say, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. I think as we've started that journey, and as apostolic women, we have started that journey. An empowered nation will always make a difference, and that's what we really need. We need empowered women in the apostolic community to really make a difference. Thank you.
Wow. Just turn to your neighbor and say wow. It was the Dalai Lama who said that if you feel that you are too small to change the world, you definitely have not been in bed with a mosquito. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just witnessed the power to bring about social change and transformation. Let's put our hands together again for tonight. Continuing, I now invite Karen to share with us her thoughts. She is the Operational Research Director, Organization for Public Health Interventions and Development.
Good afternoon, everyone. I feel like I can almost put the mic down and walk away because between Dr. Mugurunyaka's talk and Ms. Gudo's talk, I think a lot of the key highlights of what we at OFIT would like to underscore, which is a real story of progressive empowerment over a fairly short term of time through the help from UNICEF and other organizations and donors and partners that have allowed us to really try and explore and understand the needs of the apostolic community, in particular uptake of maternal and child health care, but also in HIV care and treatment. So I think everything that was presented, yes, 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 and yes, I think we're definitely on the right track. And to just give you a bit of a highlight into our own experiences, with UNICEF support through CCOR, in 2013-2014, we conducted an operational research piece with apostolic traditional birth attendants. And this really opened our eyes into the potential for discussions and dialogues and collaboration. And so we created a participatory framework in which we might go back out into communities and continue to engage. And so through further support from UNICEF and other partners, such as USAID, through what we called women's Mbreko groups, which is, as you know, the Mbreko keeps the child safe on the mother for the first 2 years of life. Safe, comfortable, sleeping in various positions, which are women's health groups, women's health and child groups. So we've gone into communities and asked communities using this dialogue session, what would you like? What do you need? Flipping this tradition of going into communities and saying, you need this. Well, it's not necessarily what people might want for themselves. And so through this framework for engagement and participatory action kind of engagement, we created some Mbreko groups in Mashonaland Central in 2015. So this is rapidly moving scenario. And with some women from the apostolic community were at these original meetings. And they said, well, hey, no, wait a minute, we want to create our own groups. So they then went in their own communities and created their own Mbreko women's maternal and child health groups, which have been very successful and resulted in village healthcare workers from the apostolic community being trained and further cascading knowledge. And just some of the interesting quotes that came from some of this work included things like, your words aren't injections. So coming and having dialogues in a safe place in health education is a very progressive, welcomed thing within the apostolic community. And we need to build on this, in particular within empowered apostolic women, great gains have been made. And then building on Dr. Mugurunyaka's presentation about engaging with men. In 2016 and 2017, we've started the Mbreko model plus men, because we recognize that fathers and men are important. So we're adding men to this dialogue. And we're including the beliefs and the needs and the perceptions of men in this family health dialogue. So in a very short time span, from 2013, where we were saying, what's going on, what's this all about, what do we need to know, to 2017, having real, active, important discussions and preferences and needs being identified. So moving forward, and I think Tendai's talk emphasized already what needs to happen moving forward, more social inclusion, more voices from the apostolic community and communities saying, this is what we want, this is what we need. And I think that's something that we need a lot more of moving forward. And then also related to that, within the health system, the Ministry of Health and Child Care, who we work in partnership with, is promoting what they call differentiated models of care. And within these models, it's a recognition of we're past the time of one size fits all. We are now in an era where patient-centered care needs to be provided. And this includes and emphasizes the needs of the apostolic community and any other community that might have special needs to uptake health services. So that's a very brief summary of what's coming from an OFID perspective. But again, I think the more partners that are involved, the more social inclusion that's involved, the greater gains that will be made. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. For me, the biggest surprise was to learn that every year, Mount Everest moves a few inches. I say to your neighbor, Mount Everest moves. Now, if Mount Everest moves, what about ourselves as human beings? Why can't we make the change that we want to see? Why can't we take the shifts that we are hearing and become agents of social transformation? Ladies and gentlemen, I open the floor to discussion. We have about 5 minutes, so let us be very brief. You raise your hand, you get to the point. I think we can take the first 3 questions or observations and comments, and then we'll take the next 2 and we close the session. Any takers? I'll start with my left here. Yes. Do we have a roving mic? Or colleagues, you have to be.
I think I'm blessed with a loud voice. Everyone from the back again?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Ophelia Mchezi. I'm a deputy type 360. I think mine is for Dr. Mabranyanga and one for Karen. The first one was to understand whether the shift that Dr. Mabranyanga mentioned is happening across the 3 typologies that you mentioned. There were the conservative, the semi-conservative, and the liberal. Are we seeing the shift in those 3 typologies? And then my next one is for Karen, maybe just to understand how the empirical groups were working. I think apart from the dialogues, I'm not sure what else that you did. Were they providing any services? And then also for the village health workers, were they providing any services within the apostolic sector, which was just maybe health education? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, here we got 2 questions. 2 other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Louisa, and my question is to Tendai. I want to know, like, what are the group's government's perception, and how are they involved in your movement?
Sorry, I missed. What are they?
How are they helping you in your organization?
The men.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Finally, is there something? No.
Mine is not a case, but I said, thank you so much for the question for everyone. I think it's quite good news for everyone who's into development work. But also, don't be disheartened. We need continuously go to Malcolm us. Though we do the other services, we go to hospitals, Nicodemusly. We come to Apostolic for other things. So don't look like we are so divorced from us. That's not it. Make that barrier for access to medical things, yes. But us, we can't be Nicodemusly for other issues. So we are together. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that confession. Yes, ma'am, and then we will have the interventions. I'm sorry, I won't be able to take it. Yes, ma'am, very quickly. And then
Mine is not personally same, but it's rather a suggestion.
Yes.
Like what she said, Nicodemously, some of us got it, but I'm an apostolic by, from birth. Yeah. I understand it's very difficult for Vanenda Kwamakandiwa, wherever, to divorce you from Makandiwa, from Makai. And you can't divorce these people from apostolic, right? And they've set up these retreats of hand. Why can't we engage those retreats and give them their medical services? That's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. We'll have quick responses from
Okay, I'll start with the last comment. Why not engage retreats or your healers, the apostolic healers, in the provision of modern, or to provide better care, maybe medicine and all that. I think in our previous research, what we did was, that was one of the recommendations. And we have said within the apostolic community, it needs diversity. You've got healthcare workers, the doctors, pharmacists, physiotherapists, nurses, you name it. Why don't we have a mapping first of who they are, engage them, and get them to work with their community, because they'll speak the language of modern medicine and health services. Then they can also bring about that shift, because when it's part of people who are part of your community are much easier to receive, and also you can be receptive to their ideas. And that's why the empowered apostolic woman has become such a powerful force for change. Why? Because she's doing it from within, as much as she's supported also from without. Then the second, the FHI 360, the question is, the shift is happening across the three typologies. Really, is it happening? It is happening. For example, we can speak, for example, to Joanne Marange, which we had in the area typology, deemed them the ultra-conservative. Why? Because of their total rejection to modern medicine and modern healthcare services. But what we've realized is within the Joanne Marange, so what you're seeing also, that there's contestations that are taking place. So you have to, who are the gatekeepers, who are the, almost like the people who hold on to protectors of the doctrine and ideology or values of that particular faith. We've got the Rabba Uma, the group of 70. It's almost like this powerful men who are there who say, we have to stick to our doctrine. But also we know from Noah Taguta, who is the leader, quite progressive. John Marange now has got a school, secondary school. They're thinking really big in terms of educating their children, which never used to happen in the past. But also looking the other way is a way of allowing people to take modern medicine and to go and seek services. So even within the ultra conservatives, there are changes that are happening. So for us to call them ultra and say they don't change, it was also a mistake on our part, and new evidence is showing that these shifts are happening, and we have to acknowledge and recognize that.
Thank you. This is in response to Auxilia from FHI 360's question about the Mbreko groups. Thank you for asking. Yes, the model of the groups is actually a model rather than a single health education moment. They're groups that meet frequently and are convened by the village healthcare worker. So they're meant to be from within the community, by the community. And then if other groups want to be created outside of that, it's completely self-determined. But within those groups, there's a recognition that healthcare, maternal healthcare and child healthcare is not unifaceted, it's multifaceted, and the drivers of it are multifaceted. So what the groups really focus on, and I just happened to bring it just in case somebody wanted to talk after, but please come and speak to us after if you want to hear more about it, is that there are basically 10 steps which we know lead to the majority of maternal and child mortality and morbidity in Zimbabwe. So it's really focusing, exploring those with women and within the bounds of their own comfort. What are their barriers to uptake services? Who can help them? And so the Action Birth Card is like a tool for counseling for that. but also really looks at the main drivers. So within the groups, there's assistance with birth registration, which we know can be a barrier to both healthcare and education. There's growth monitoring. So really the groups can self-determine what they're comfortable with, but there's an emphasis that there are certain things that we know will help reduce morbidity and mortality. And then associated with that is the economic component. So there's income generation activities and internal savings and lending training within each group so that they can self-determine. And in fact, they set up mechanisms whereby they can lend each other money if a child needs to go for care. So it's to create the sustainable model of empowerment that isn't fixed on any one idea of any one person, that you can have a healthy community and a healthy child within the bounds of your comfort.
Thank you. Just to answer how men are helping us in the apostolic community and is outward. First of all, I have to acknowledge my husband. My husband is an apostolic member. He has supported me through the establishment of Outward. He has allowed me to go around the country, being an advocate for change, and also empower adolescent girls. That's number one. So I've got a support from an apostolic man. I've got allowed me to be there for other voiceless women around the country. Secondly, when we had our conference in Bern, the first conference we had where more than 400 women attended, we acknowledged and thanked their husbands for allowing them to attend that conference. That was the first support we saw from the apostolic men, because a lot of women in the apostolic community, they are submissive. So being submissive, if your husband says no, you just have to accept. But as to what Florence said, I used to get sick every time I would get pregnant. And I told my husband that I would go to the clinic. And if you don't allow me to go to visit the clinic, marriage is over. So a lot of women are empowered and they're getting their support from their men. And I think for Florence to continue to be a village health worker, she got that support and she was allowed to do that by her husband. We've got very progressive men who are out there, who are supporting our cause. And even today, right now in this room, I've got some apostolic members, our leaders from our church. And also I have to acknowledge you, the Caesar, who are here today. I think they are progressive men who have been advocating for change, who have been trying to empower women in their own rights. And as women today, we acknowledge the apostolic men, and even the leaders who are also putting policies which also they prejudice us as women, but we need to acknowledge them. Like we said, change is inevitable. It will happen, and also they will acknowledge that change is there and it's coming. Thank you.
Let's put our hands together for the good men. Ladies and gentlemen, I will take two quick questions very quickly. I can see one at the back there. My apologies. I had also noted. Please, let's go ahead very quickly. We'll get another.
I'm Reverend Moses from Caesar. I would like to add what Ms. Bugo and Professor Brian said. Yes, Caesar, we managed to make a gender equality and gender policy from 2020. The so-called outcomes, the one arising outcomes, one master and the other, which were part of this movement, this gender equality and gender policy. I think as Caesar, all church members, we organize a workshop in Northern and Southern region, and the so-called outcomes agreed that by 2022, we must have 25% of women in leadership.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Oh.
And then I will go to him.
Okay, my name is Sulato. I'm a freelance writer from Botswana. I wanted to find out two things. Well, a lot of things, but the main thing, the main thing is this just something that you're doing in Zimbabwe, or is it like an international thing? Is it in other? And the second thing was, what have been the ripple effects around the changes? Obviously, you're moving from a certain way of life to now the empowerment. Is this affecting families? How's it affecting ministry? And just your life? I mean, I can imagine it's good, but naturally, when women are empowered, they obviously think better, they behave different. How has that been affecting?
Okay, thank you. The last one here, and then I'll ask my panelists to.
Thank you very much. My name is Pinay Stolen from the Center for Development Research and Development. I'd like to really appreciate the presenters, the researcher, Dr. Maganya, your organization, and the initiatives that you're doing. Thank you very much for all this. I want to say that the first 13 years of my 20 years of life, I was in apostolic member of Joan Marai in Spain. And this suffering that Dr. Maganya was talking about, I could relate to it vividly. Because there were many times when I get sick, very sick. If some of you want to see my left leg, at some point when I was heading Kettle, I fell. When we were running away from doing the walk, I was also hit by a bullet. But all that, I was not allowed to go and seek modern medicine by my parents. And I was also told that in terms of education, the ceiling was grade 7. And I was not supposed to go beyond grade 7. And I was the eldest, and so I was also told in very uncertain terms that I should also tell my siblings, to help my parents to tell my siblings that education will go up to grade 7. And so I suffered from that emotion because I had an inspiration to really go beyond grade 7, which eventually happened. I went to university, a PhD. So because of the suffering, I remember your statement was saying that you suffered up to a certain point. So at a certain point, I rebelled from my parents. So I terminated or resigned my membership in Joan Marai, and I joined the United Church of Christ in Zimbabwe, which I am still a member of. And I went to mission school there to do my high school. So that's how I escaped that suffering that we. So I changed from going outside, which is different from what the Jedi has done. It's within. Yeah. And it is also from that point that I managed to influence my siblings and other relatives who were in Joan Marai to also get out of that and say that education is key. So in all the things that we're talking about the health, the system, and so on, I continue to say, along with this intervention, there's also need to bring in the education sector so that this shift that we're talking about can actually accelerate a bit faster than what it is right now. Thank you.
Let's thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your story. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be very sharp on you. Let's get straight to the point as we are about to close. The person I think was. There's some diplomacy going on. What has been the impact of this change and transformation within the apostolic sector as women get empowered? Is there a backlash? I think that's the
Maybe not backlash.
What is the backlash? Yeah, but what have been the effect of this within the community?
Thank you. I think I was put on the spot here. But anyway, I'll answer that. I think it's also directed to me. I think for any change to happen, definitely there are people who also challenge you. There have been some challenges from other spheres, like especially now, change coming from women, trying to empower the women. And the apostolic community is a patriarchal, it's got patriarchal leadership. I think most of, or if not all, the apostolic churches, they are led by men. And it's not easy to, for men to hear that there is a woman who is saying girls must not be married, and women must not be hit. And if a woman does something wrong, the only lesson or punishment she knows is supposed to be fists each and every day. So it's something which has been a challenge on our part, but we are very grateful from other leaders. Other leaders have dialogued, we have sat down with them and we have dialogued, and they are very willing to support us to seeing results and also for change to happen.
Yeah, very quickly, I think
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Magdalena and Tenda. I'm fairly honored to be sitting here and discussing about these important issues, and thank you for UNICEF for hosting and continuing the dialogue. And we're going to keep continuing the learning of USR. So if there's any other questions or anything you want to discuss individually, I'm happy to stay for as long as needed.
I think from the evidence, I totally agree with you. Suffering is also empowering. Pain is also liberating. The choice between making changes within or escaping, I think those are both options that are available to individuals. Some have escaped, some have opted to bring about changes within, some have suffered to a point of death, others have used the suffering to bring about the change. So I think what we need to do is to be open-minded and to see these changes and speak to them, recognizing in some cases where women, at the cost of their lives, rejection, violence, have chosen to stand up and bring about the change. I think that's worth celebrating. It's a narrative that has to be told.
Ladies and gentlemen, turn to your neighbor and say it's been good to be here. By virtue of the authority vested in me,